Everybody knows about Candida. And if you ask the general people, they will say, oh my God, Candida, this is bad. But in fact, Candida could be beneficial when it is at low level. When we have Candida in our gut, it can break some food, which will give byproducts to the bacteria, the good bacteria to live, and both of them will play very nicely together. However, if we provide circumstances for Candida to increase, then it overgrows. Then that's where can start causing trouble, can break the gut lining, for example, and can invade and cause infections.
This is the Home of Healthspan podcast, where we profile health and wellness role models, sharing their stories and the tools, practices, and routines they use to live a lively life. Dr. Ghannoum, it is so wonderful to have you today on the Home of Healthspan podcast. You know, we have many people that come in that are experts in their own journey, but I don't believe we've ever had a top 1% cited scientist in terms of experts in the whole world. So very, very excited to dive in with you today.
Likewise, I really was looking very much forward to talking to both of you.
Great. And so before we go too deep on your background and all the amazing work you do, how would you define yourself?
You know, I am a human being. I believe in humanity. I believe we are all the same. And I am an optimistic person. I always look for the bright side and just keep going.
So when you think of living your best life, your entire life, what does that look like and mean for you?
It really is. This is a very interesting question because a lot of the times, while I'm walking my dog, I start thinking, what's all life about, especially these days with everything going around. And I really feel I am a lucky person because I always, as I mentioned, I'm an optimistic person. I think when I look at how fortunate I am with respect to where I am in life, with my family, with my kids, with my research, with the people, I'm a happy person, And I really believe, as I mentioned before, about we are all human beings. I respect people. I enjoy it. And my wife laughs at me all the time when I travel, because whenever I travel, I come back, I say, oh, these people are so nice. She said, you are crazy. Everybody is nice to you. I told her, but we are all the same. Honestly, irrespective of what culture, what country, what stuff you do, when you look down deep into it, we are all the same people. And that's what keeps me going and happy.
So you say we're all the same. So I'm curious, what you're very, very well known for your work and your study, not just in the microbiome, which is gaining in importance, gaining in awareness, but also coining the term for the mycobiome. Could you talk a little bit about what that is? Because that's something that can be pretty different between us, right?
Sure. When you look at it, the microbiome, I coined that term because mycology, which is the study of fungus, okay? So I thought if we are looking at the community of fungi that lives in and on our body, I said, let's call it mycobiome, which refers to the fungal community that live in our body. And to me, I make people laugh because I say, listen, I'm a fungi. I've been fungus for nearly, believe it or not, nearly 50 years, which is unbelievable. But it makes me very happy because I believe, when we look at our body, especially with respect to the microbiome, that both bacteria and fungi, the two communities there, they work and play together and they help us. And that's why all the time I say, really, it's very important to consider both. In addition, of course, I don't want to forget viruses because people think, oh my God, he forgot about it. No, viruses are very important as well, and archaea, which is small cells, But at least from my research and my work over the years, I have focused on bacteria and fungi, and I find them very interesting because they not only are present in our body, but they interact together. Sometimes they help us, but sometimes they are detrimental to us.
Can you say more about that? So they can help us, they can be detrimental to us, because ideally they kind of want us to succeed because that helps them flourish in that world. And so what is it that goes off kilter that it leads to that?
This really brings us back to the term like homeostasis or balance. So when the microorganisms in our body, both bacteria and fungi, are balanced, and when I say balanced, it means there are more beneficial microbes than pathogens or those that can cause disease. So it's very important for us to have a beneficial community of microbes. We need them to be balanced. We need to have more beneficial organisms. We need the guys who can cause disease to be under control. But sometimes what happens, we have certain practices we do, what type of diet we do, what type of exercise and this sort of thing. We can affect this balance where instead of having beneficial microbes, we are helping the bad bugs to cause more issues. And that's why, like, if you think about it, with respect, let's take an example. If we take Candida, for example, everybody knows about Candida. And if you ask the general people, they will say, oh my God, Candida, this is bad. But in fact, Candida could be beneficial when it is at low level. It means the amount that we have in our body is not too high. Okay? And what it does sometimes, just to give a critical or an example, what happens is that it can break, when we have Candida in our gut, it can break some food, which will give byproducts to the bacteria, the good bacteria, to live, and both of them will play very nicely together. However, if we provide circumstances for Candida to increase, then it overgrows. And when it overgrows, then that's where, as you mentioned, can start causing trouble. In what sense? It can break the gut lining, for example, and can invade and cause infections. So that's why we need, when we want to think about microorganisms, we need to think about, it depends about the circumstances where they are and how they interact, and are they more friendly to us or otherwise.
Talking about gut health has become a very viral term, I think, on social media, and just hearing how you're explaining how intricate and nuanced these balances are. There's people who try to sell the pill that's the fix-all. It's going to balance your microbiome. So obviously we know a lot of those things are gimmicks, but what are some things on your daily basis that you can kind of tweak or shift to kind of keep that balance for yourself diet-wise?
First of all, I agree with you. People think we can have a pill or take a pill for anything and then we are going to be fine. In fact, it is more holistic approach. It's not just taking medicine, because a lot of the time, these type of, let's say, probiotics and whatever, it's not necessarily they will help us. So if you look at it, to me, we need to have, as I suggest, balanced microbiome, but we need to have a balance in our life. What type of food we eat? Do we exercise? We are all stressed these days. And that's why it's very important to try to take measures, meditation, yoga, to try to reduce this stress. Okay. You need to avoid taking some medications. You don't have to. Like, for example, somebody has viral infections, they give him antibiotics. It's not going to work, you see? So it is a holistic approach where you need to control not just one piece, but if you try to put it all together as a package, it's going to help you with respect to your gut health and overall health, for that matter.
Yeah, that makes sense, because it's an ecosystem, right? You have to get the ecosystem working well together. And you touched on so many things. So, because we try to think about health across these 5 pillars, right? The fitness side, nutrition, sleep and recovery, right? If you're not getting enough sleep, that's going to impact it. The stress side, and then social connection and purpose. And I think there may be kind of psychological benefits that physiologically manifest themselves, but there may be something too, and I'll be curious on your take when we get there, on is that interaction with other people, does it expose us to more and greater variety that actually can be beneficial in its own way? But I'd love, if you don't mind, to start with the nutrition side. So you're saying we can either feed to let it flourish, the good to have the right balance, or we may be putting things into our body that go the other direction. Can you talk about a little bit about what those two scenarios look like?
With respect to the diet and food, what we eat, this is very, very critical. Nowadays, unfortunately, we have a lot of fast food, a lot of things which you go buy because, people are busy. Sometimes the mother and the father are working. And then when they come, they want to try to buy things from outside and this sort of thing. I think we need to go a little bit back to try to play a more role in what type of things we have and give more time. And, it's easy for me to say, give more time because everybody is very busy. However, we need to look at our life. Okay, this is an important element. What we eat, what we put in our mouth is really critical because can impact us in many ways. That's why, for me, we need to cut down the amount of sugar, for example, we eat. Especially sugar will definitely increase the candida in our body and they become overgrown. And why I say this? Because you go and buy orange juice. I am from the Mediterranean. I love orange juice because you used to go get the oranges, we squeeze it and eat it. Now you look at the orange juice, like there is 40 grams, of sugar which is a lot. That's why now people, I don't like to have orange juice, except if I squeeze it, which I don't, but that's I don't take it. So you need to control the type of carbohydrates or sugar. You need to make sure you eat less meat. I'm not saying don't eat meat. I think, look, we are carnivores, so we can eat meat, no problem. But is the proportion and the amount you eat is very, very important. Sometimes if you think about it, in Europe, when you go out to eat, you find the portion of food is much smaller, okay? So we need to here try to follow something like that as well. Of course, during the day, like for me, I come to work and because I'm an early riser, so I eat breakfast early. And then when I come to work by 10 o'clock, I start to have some nuts, pistachios, or, almonds. And these have been shown to be very beneficial, with respect to the microbiome, for example. Okay. So that's very, very important. You need to eat also fruits, like try to have more vegetables, okay, and fruits. And people laugh at me because I love tomatoes. As you know, tomatoes are fruit.
This time of year, they're so good. They're so good.
Especially now, exactly, So if we try to look, let's have less carb, less meat, let's have more fish, let's have more antioxidant food, cruciferous. Let's eat some lentils, for example, the beans and lentils are really very, very good, So if you have this variety and try to cut the portion a little bit, at least from the food point of view, this is going to help you, certainly.
It sounds like there are three things going on, and I'd love for you to get a little more into the mechanics, if you don't mind. So there's one of less of the things like sugar, and I'd be curious what other things that may feed and to lead to overgrowth, that feed to lead to an imbalance of doing too much of a bad thing. Then there's something that it sounds like is coming from the cruciferous plants and the vegetables and the antioxidants that's helping keep it balanced. And then there seemed like a third piece that was portion control. And I don't know if that's just a total caloric side of things. And so once you get overweight or something, if that creates its own issue, but just better understanding what each of those look like and the mechanics that lead to it either this ecosystem working well or it getting out of balance and kind of being that dangerous cycle.
First of all, if we look at the quantities of food, definitely we need to have food. This is what supports our body. But sometimes we go to a place, even you have the portion of salad they give you is so huge, and then you take the meat, and then when you are trying to digest it, to break it down, your body does not know how to handle it very well. So also when I talk about meat, for example. Why do we want to avoid it? Because there is a lot of saturated fat. So we need unsaturated fat, which really, a lot of the time, from the mechanistic point of view, when you have this, you are increasing inflammation, for example. Your body start to react to this. Also, the type of food when we talked about, lentils, because it has fiber. And the fibers, what they do in our body is they feed the good microbes. So mechanistically, these microbes take this fiber as food, and then guess what they do? They start to produce some metabolites or small chemicals which help us, like short-chain fatty acids. Okay? So you can see what happens. We eat the right food, fiber, the microorganisms start to eat it, they start to produce short-chain fatty acids, and short-chain fatty acids, what they do, they help our gut lining, they feed the colonocyte, the cells in our colon, but also they allow to support your immunity. You'll have less inflammation. So you can see this is just one example how the whole process can lead to better health.
Yeah, and it's certainly, I mean, as you describe it, best case scenario, right? If we go back to 100 years and there's not processing and all this, right? You're just eating the plants and the animals and it's all coming in. But understanding maybe now some of the animals you're eating may not be the most natural. They may have different things in them, or the soil quality may be degraded. You've developed something, or people just got off track and they need to get back on with your company, Biome. You've developed something to help people with that. Can you say a little bit more about the probiotic that you have?
As we mentioned, really sometimes people have a bad rap with this probiotics. That's just general, but then I'll go into the biome. And what I believe is, what I'd like to do is to develop a product based on the science. Because a lot of the time, people put things together and say, oh, it works. But to me, what I wanted to do, I focused, how we started Biome, I focused on the study of Crohn's disease. And when we looked at Crohn's disease, we found that there is an increase in Candida tropicalis, one of the fungus, one of the Candida sort of group, as well as E. coli and Serratia marcescens. So these, what they do, they come together and they form what we call biofilms. It's like the plaque in your teeth, okay? But instead of in our teeth, they form it in our gut. So we call it digestive plaque, okay? Or digestive biofilms. So when we found this, we said, okay, we have these three organisms which are pathogens. Again, they cause disease. What they do, they can form this biofilm and they start poking holes in our gut, okay, gut lining. So I said, okay, how can we really stop these guys from doing this? So we did the research, correlation analysis. We looked at bacteria, fungus, bacteria, and fungus, and we identified organisms that are able to inhibit those bugs, okay, and inhibit their ability to make this biofilm. So with that in mind, we said, okay, so this is what we need to use: Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, P. brevi, as well as a yeast Saccharomyces, we call it Boulardii, which is one of the Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is, as you know, we use it in baking and or beer making and this sort of thing. But in addition, because we wanted to break the biofilm, we found an enzyme called amylase, where what it does, it have been shown to break biofilms. So we said, this is really a great formulation. Let's put it together. But then we want to validate it. We need to make sure that what we are saying works. It's not like I say, these will be great, let's use them. So what we do, because of my background in helping companies develop their antifungals drugs, I said, we need to do analysis with respect to in vitro testing, in vivo testing, and then do clinical trials. And she does this new biome product or probiotic works, okay? And lo and behold, we did in vitro testing, and I was lucky because I was funded by the National Institute of Health to study biofilms. So I know how to grow biofilms, So we use this model in vitro and we showed we can destroy it. Then we said, okay, it's fine. In vitro works. Can we do now in vivo using animals? I know people don't like sometimes to use animals, but I tell you, it's very important to make sure before we use it as humans to make sure it works. And we know very early that if it does any harm, we stop it. There are a lot of regulations. It's not like you do it as you like. No, there are regulations which make sure we take care of the animals and the number of animals and whatever. And so I go back to the subject. We used that. We took mice and they had the Crohn's disease. We gave them this probiotic, and lo and behold, they really did very well. So that makes us very, very happy. But then, okay, it's good in vitro and good in vivo. People ask, so what does it do in humans? And that's where we did 3 clinical trials. The first, we did a clinical trials in people where they took the probiotic and amylase, the blend, and then we showed that it shifts the microbiome in the right direction, in the positive way. In other words, it reduced the pathogens and increased the good guys. So also we found that we took some inflammatory markers, the genes that are, whether they are up or down, and we found that we were able to reduce the pro-inflammatory, the genes that cause inflammation, and decrease that, and increase the anti-inflammatory genes. So that was very good. We then went into another clinical trial. We said, okay, it's good, you change the microbiome, it's better. What about your symptoms? And what we found in the second clinical trial, about 51 people were enrolled, and we showed that we were able to reduce different inflammatory symptoms and gastrointestinal, like flatulence, abdominal discomfort or pain, bloating. And then that's the primary endpoints. But then secondary endpoints with respect to constipation also went down. And finally, we wanted to see also, if you fix these gut issues, will you have less stress? And we used a tertiary endpoint, which showed that, yes, we were able to reduce the anxiety. So you can see we built that and we provide the science behind it, which makes you more comfortable. Yeah, okay, this is reasonable to use.
And is it just for people with Crohn's disease, or is it of benefit to others?
Oh, it's benefit to others. When you have imbalance in your microbiome, then it's good. Basically, what do we mean by imbalance? As I mentioned earlier, we are reducing the beneficial organisms and we're increasing the bad guys. So now what we did in Biome, we also do gut testing. People send us their stool samples, and then we compare what microbes in a person's stool compared to healthy controls. Like we have thousands of people where we were able to put the comparison between healthy people, like people who are not overweight, they are not on drugs, they are, they eat right, they don't stress, whatever, and we compare it with whatever a person samples there. And then based on this, we are able to know whether, for example, if we see that there is a lot of Candida, okay, then we know that you need to cut sugar. You need to have vitamins. Vitamins are very important because studies have shown that with inadequate amount of vitamin A, B, and C, you have gastrointestinal issues. But also we look at the bacteria. Again, I don't want people to say this guy is obsessed with Candida. I am, but no. But if you look at the protobacteria, which is a phylum of bacteria, and what we found, an increase in it is a red flag for inflammation. So what to do about it? You have to take fibers as well as vitamin D3. You see? So we come up. So if you are, you send a sample, we look. If you are healthy, we'll tell you, listen, continue doing what you are doing. You're doing a great job. If not, based on your profile, we are able to tell you how you can adjust it. Take some probiotic, diet, and stress. Like one lady, honestly, sent her sample. She eats fantastic food. Everything is fine. But her microbiome was out of balance. So when we dug deeply, because there are 50 questionnaires we asked these people, and then we are able to know whether they exercise, are they stressed, as all this. And we found she is very, very stressed. So I advised her, please, you need to take measure, meditation, yoga. Go out for a walk. I tell you, these days, when I go home from work, I have a dog, Prince. I love this guy, by the way. So I go and take him for a walk, and it's so relaxing. Yeah, because we work hard. You are a lot of stresses to try to make things happening and this sort of thing. So when you go and walk, it relaxes you. So we advise them to relax and also to take meditation and yoga. And this, I want to make you laugh at this, because when I give talks, sometimes I look at the male audience, I say, guys, women are better than us because they do more yoga, they do more relaxing stuff. And my wife laughs at me because when I first started to do yoga, I went and I was the only man in the room, I say, oh my God. I say, guys, you need to go and have yoga. Do yoga because it will help you. It relaxes you because you don't think about things for 1.5 hours, just trying to stretch and struggling doing that. So this relaxes.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to just coming into your breath and your body, right? Like get out of the head and get into your breath and body. And so you brought it up several times, right? About the mycobiome are not just influenced by what we consume in our bodies, but it's also what we consume in our minds. And so you mentioned a few practices. Can you say how you work on that mindset yourself? So it sounded like there's some yoga in there. Do you meditate? Do you use any apps or anything?
I don't meditate. Like I do more yoga, but sometimes I like in the afternoon just to sit down like 15 minutes, do nothing, just to relax. But what I do, I tell you, which helping me is in the morning, I wake up early, okay? And I go and do, I got a bike Peloton. I really love that Peloton. I'm not trying to advertise for them, but really, because you have something to, I'm sure there are other models as well, but something you have instructor keep you going and this sort of thing. I find it really fantastic, Then I eat food and I make sure I eat, like in the morning, I like oatmeal, I like cereal, which is, I avoid things with sugar and this sort of thing. So when I finish that, then I go to work. And at work, you laugh at me because sometimes, like we sit in Zooms and you sit in meetings, but I walk a lot. And I'm lucky because I have 2 labs, one at Case Western and another lab at University Hospitals. But they are separate. So I go walking and up and down the stairs, So I do a lot of that. I eat some nuts. And then when I go home, I as I mentioned, I take my dog for a walk. Then, relax with my wife. We have nice dinner, watch some television where most of the time I go to sleep. And, and my wife loves watching films with me because it's always new, and I am optimistic, as you said. Like I look at, into things. It's good. We are lucky. We should be very up and think about it in the right way because we are lucky.
On the optimism, I'm curious: were you born that way? Did you notice you always had that? So, from my personal example, right? I went to law school in the US and the UK. And law is one of those rare professions where pessimists outperform optimists in general, right? And I had a very cynical attitude for a long time and then just got out and did not practice law, did not go that route. And for the past year and plus, I've been really trying to cultivate this morning gratitude practice where I sit there and have to think through 5 brand new things to be grateful for. And by not just going on autopilot, right? Okay, I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for my family. And saying the same thing every day, but 5 brand new things. It forces me to really be on notice every day for what can I be grateful for today that tomorrow morning I'll be thinking about. And it's completely transformed both how I look backwards, because every day is an amazing day because I'm thinking about all the great things that happen. And then also how I live in the present. But that wasn't necessarily how I came out, right? It was something that I developed. How has it been for you?
This is very interesting. I tell you, I don't know. I didn't tell you my story. I was a professor at Kuwait University, till the 91, where we were in the summer in England, because I did my PhD in England, in Loughborough. So,
Okay.
so we were there, and then suddenly the invasion happened, and I lost my job. And the good news, my family and kids were together in England, and oh my God, overnight the world changed, because we were in holiday. Imagine you go to Costa Rica and you cannot come back. It's unbelievable. So, but I was also fortunate. That's what taught me about fortune. Before the invasion of Kuwait, I was invited to give a talk in DC, Washington, DC, it was the first World Congress on the biology of garlic, of all things, And I have to tell you the story. This guy who was a faculty, Nasser, his name, in Kuwait, a Kuwaiti guy. I'm Lebanese originally. Every day he comes and tells me, study garlic. I say, leave me alone. I don't want to study garlic. But he never left me. And you know what I did? Honestly, I published 3 papers on garlic. And that's how I got invited to DC to talk about garlic. So when that invasion happened, I called them. I said, guys, send me the ticket to England. Now I'm not going back to Kuwait. So I came to a meeting, and then I contacted the head of mycology, the study of fungi at the NIH. His name, Jack Bennett, a great guy. I called him. I say, listen, I need your help. He say, oh, what do you want? I say, I lost my job. I need a job. I want you to help me. The guy was so fantastic. I went there. He gave me the Rolodex, and I start calling people. And then he said, look, you should come to, in 2 weeks, we have a big meeting on fungus in DC. Come, you will meet all these investigators and good key opinion leaders. I say, I can't do it because I don't have money to stay 2 weeks. So going back to the hotel, at the Willard Hotel, I passed through Le Méridien, which is across I saw a travel agent, a black guy. I said to him, listen, you are a black guy, you are a travel agent, you have to help me. I don't know if I do it now, honest to God. But, I was desperate. He said, what do you want? I said, I need you to change my ticket. I have a friend in Milwaukee. I want to go to him. And then I want to come back because this guy tells me there's a meeting. And you know what he did? He fixed it. He fixed my ticket. I came back. Jack Bennett invited me to his house, where he invited all these PIs, principal investigators. I got 2 jobs. At that evening, I got 2 jobs. So lo and behold, time passed when I came here, and maybe I would tell you 25 years after, my son, Afif, he told me, Dad, we should look for this guy. And what he did, he put in Facebook, and lo and behold, Wall Street Journal also picked it up, and we found the guy, So the
travel agent. You found the travel.
And Washington Post put the story there, So, my friend, and look where am I now? So I'm optimistic because really I was lucky.
I mean, amazing. And it's not just you, right? Like, because of the opportunity, what it did for your family, but then also what it did for science and for this country, right? Like, to get in those NIH grants and everything and all that it feeds. You've published 450 plus papers, right? All of this because of these things that happen. It's amazing.
That's it. That's why I'm optimistic like this. And honestly, I'm not exaggerating if I tell you I've been lucky in my life with these things that happen. I don't know if you have time. I can tell you a very quick story. You will laugh at this.
Please.
Also, my first job after I finished my PhD, I wanted a job, and my wife told me, look. So I went to the Guardian, newspaper, and they had advertisement for jobs, and there was one in Libya. She said, there's in Libya, they need lecturers. I said, okay. So I go, and then when I went there, they showed me the map of Libya, which, as you know, is in North Africa. It's in the middle of the desert there. And the place they wanted was in the middle of the desert. I say, oh my God. So I go, I didn't tell them no. Of course, I went out. I called my wife because she was in Loughborough. I was in London. I say, it's in the middle of the desert. She said, you need a job. I say, you want to send me to the desert? So anyway, I said to her, okay, I didn't tell them no. I'll go to Lebanon, to try to find a job. If I don't find it, I have to go. So I go to Lebanon, honest to God, maybe 1 month after, the Libyans sent me this telegram at that time. There was no email or anything. And they said, oh, we changed the place of the institute to Malta, the Mediterranean island of Malta. Oh my God. I said, oh, and then, the funniest thing, they say, because, you are moving from the Sabha, this area in Libya, to Malta, we're giving you 30% increase because, suffering. I am suffering. When I went to Malta, I called my wife. I said, okay, I have to come to Malta. She said, what are you doing in Malta? I said, I got a job. You see what I mean? I mean, I have to be optimistic.
Yeah.
I love that, the positivity and the whole connection to like your story, but also, being optimistic is really important to keep that stress level down and homeostasis. And I know you mentioned you take like a little walk every day. Are there, things that you do in exercise that could throw your balance off? And, how would you suggest throughout your life how you tailor your exercise so you can keep the balance, but also that longevity?
Yeah, definitely. Like, in my job, sometimes you travel, and then in the travel, it's very difficult sometimes to really, like, especially if you go from America to Japan, for example, it's day and night, and what I try to do as much as I can, and I like to walk, so I walk even there. But, it doesn't matter, like, if it is a short, like, 2-3 days a week, then you catch up. But I try to do as much as I can, even when I don't meet my goals with respect to exercise, but it's okay, you can make it. And sometimes it's so funny, like when you are traveling, I tend to eat more things, I don't know why. Maybe I think, oh my God, I may not get food. I don't know why, but this is like mentally, you think I have to eat, So I come back and I put some weight, but then I say, okay, I have to bring it back. So it's, moderation is really my principle. If you are moderate in your things, sometimes you go off, it's okay, we can do back. And sometimes I love ice cream. So it's okay, eat some. But, as long as you are controlling it, the portions and whatever, it's okay. Like, we shouldn't be too strict because then you get tired of it, Moderation is the way to go.
It's a really good point on the giving yourself that grace, right? Like there's the 5 pillars in optimizing, but with one of them being that mindset and the stress. If you're stressing about the other 4 constantly, then you may be doing more harm than good. And it shows up in your microbiome. It shows up in all the biomarkers. So you've mentioned several times the amount that you walk and you're on your feet and you're going up and down the stairs. Do you have any shoes that you say, like, this makes a big difference? Because I would imagine being on your feet that amount, walking around, do you find that you're like, these are the comfy shoes that I swear by?
This is a very good question, because sometimes you are right, like you're tired. So now I tend to have shoes that are a little bit more cushiony. There are some really good, like Nike. You have to choose, and I don't stick to one brand. Sort of, I just try some, and I change it from time to time. And sometimes it depends on the weather, like if it is raining and this sort of thing. So I use different types of shoes. But in general, I tend to get something which is a little bit more cushiony. Even my work shoes, I try to have. They have a sole is like white, whereas it's leather on top. It's cushiony. It's like combination of the sport shoes and the dressy shoes.
Yeah.
I find them very, very good like that. And I try to change. I don't stick to only one. I use different types depending on where I'm going and what I'm.
On sleep, you mentioned, you're watching the movie with your wife and sometimes you're falling asleep. And we know sleep deprivation can have real impacts on your health. How do you protect that sleep, or how do you think about setting up your sleep, both when you're at home and when you travel? So knowing, time zones mess things up.
I try to, when in the evening, I just get tired. I think also as you get older, I don't know what happened. Like you have some pain, a little aching in your feet. So before I used to say, oh, I should take Tylenol or other, painkillers. I don't do that anymore. So what I do when I'm feeling like this, I just close my eyes and I go to sleep. But very interesting because when I wake up, even if I am in the sofa and then before I go to bed, you feel that it really helps you a lot. I tend to try to sleep maybe 7 hours, 6.5 hours. Sometimes because of our work and the demand of life, sometimes I wake up in the morning early and then my mind starts working about grants and about how to do this and how to do contracts. And so that sometimes disturb my sleep. The good news, I don't have it a lot. And then what I do to try to avoid that, I try to say, okay, that's worrying me. Let me write it down when I wake up so that I address it. So I address it so I feel comfortable. But it's hard sometimes to have full sleep. But it's really will be fantastic. 6-7 hours will be plenty. And then it's like what you said. If you are at home and you have nice environment, you are happy with the family and the your kids, your wife, and this sort of thing. It really helps a lot, especially when you grow. You guys are young, but when you are young and you have the kids, it gives more pressure. But now, mine are all grown. So all in all, I don't have a lot of stress from that.
But that notebook practice, so is that something you keep at your nightstand next to your bed? So hey, when I get up, I can write this down? Because I've heard it from Buddhist monks as well, right? That when they meditate, some will keep a notebook. So if something pops up, so that doesn't keep popping up, they just write it down. So it can kind of clear off the memory and then get back to that clear-headedness. Yeah. It sounds like you do a similar thing with your sleep.
You can see this card, like I have this. I start to pipe things which is bother me, then I come and address them, because if you don't, then you forget it, but then it comes back,
Yeah.
So I write these special, like, these days in my, as a professor and trying to get studies and do research for, studies for biome and helping them. There are so many things going on. And that's why it's very important I write down things because I cannot control it altogether. And this reminds me, okay, this is here, I deal with it.
There's a book I read, it was 10 years ago, The Organized Mind, that kind of taught me why that works. So it talks about our short-term versus longer-term memory, and our short-term memory being like the RAM on a computer. So you may have a terabyte of storage space, but you have less than a gig of RAM. And back then it was way, way less, right? The RAM and what you can actually process at the same time. And so when you keep having these thoughts, it's your brain's really, really worried you're going to forget it. You're going to let something slip. And so you can't move to other things because it's still trying to work on those. Whereas the physical act of writing, not putting it in a note on your phone or computer, but physically writing it down, there's something where your body says, oh, okay, that's taken care of. I can now clean that RAM and it can go to problem solving, and go to this next thing. And so it's interesting. You've come to that as well.
Honestly, I find it very good. Like at the weekend, people sometimes they think I'm working, but sometimes at the weekend, these things come together. And honestly, like I have a number of projects with people working, different things. The nice thing, it's exciting. A lot of the things we are doing, it's good. You know what I mean? But at the same time, because there's so many things going on, you may forget, like what's this person's doing, what that person is doing. So I write it down. Like this weekend, I wrote, what projects do we have? Who is doing it? So that I go to them, okay, do this. And they laugh at me sometimes. I say, guys, it's not my job to remind you, but I remind you.
But you're so good at it. That's the problem. You get really good at something, and then you become the person, right?
Talking about like memory, what you said, it's really true. Like some of the things you just forget about, you don't remember. And I am terrible with names, I don't remember names. Oh my God. This friend of mine the other day asking me about there is a patient in Israel, of all places, that he has tinea capitis, which is fungal infection in the head, So he was showing me the picture. I said, if we can get the isolate, the fungus that causes it, we can test it and we know what is the best drug to give. He said, Mahmoud, we can't get it from Israel, So I said, oh, I have some friends there I know who are mycologists that study fungus. And I forgot the name, And then I was sitting and watching the television. Oh, Esther Siegel. I said, just popped out. That's why I said, okay, write it so that I tell him. So, yeah, and I think we, as you say, functional memory versus the others, we all forget. We have so many things in our mind. You cannot just remember it. But if you give yourself time, it comes back. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it's there. It's just a question how you access it.
Yes.
And how long it takes and what the trigger is that pops it out. And so many times it's like when you're watching TV or when you're in the shower or when you're walking the dog, right? It's something when you fully take your mind off of it, it gives that relaxation.
It's really true. It's really true.
If we want to connect to our last pillar, so social connection and purpose, I think this can kind of tie into like the stress management as well. But besides in your daily routine, like walking your dog, spending some time with your wife, like how do you get out into like the community? I know you're a professor. What do you do to kind of connect with the people around you and, serve that need?
I really think this is really very, very critical, First of all, I always remembered when I was a little boy walking in Lebanon, and you see people passing by, you say, good evening, you don't know them at all. You don't say. So to me, a lot of the time I find when you are walking at work, it's very nice to, just say hi. It doesn't hurt anybody. And in fact, it makes people smile and this sort of thing. So I think this is one thing which I really like. That's what. Now, when I am in walking the dog, my dog is a funny character. What he does, he just hears cars well before I see them, and he sits down and he twirls around when he sees them. So you should see all the neighborhood now. They know him, and they are so friendly, So I really was able to build this because this relationship. In this area, we just moved about 1.5 years. So all the walk I took is about 1.5 miles, 2 miles, depending on where I'm going. And you see people, and everybody is friendly, and they love this dog. So the other day, one woman, she said, "Can you twirl for me?" And talking to him, but he wanted to come. He wants to go to her. I said, no, he wants to say hi. Honestly, she went out of the car and petted him and this sort of thing. So it's really, it makes a lot of social interaction. And I am in general, I'm a friendly guy. I like to say, hi to people, or it's very important. And of course, the other part of the family, we are very close as a family, So you need to talk with your kids. You need to talk with your relatives, and you need to talk to, anybody close to you, because you help each other. And especially these days, I mean, in America, there is a lot of people who are lonely. So it's very important to, at least if you have somebody in your neighborhood, try to connect with them. It will be good for them. It will be good for you. It's really two-way street. It's not just one. So that's what I do, and whenever I go to meetings, I enjoy it also. Sometimes, a lot of the time, meetings really they become your friends, because you see these people every now and then. So we always go out and chat, and so it's very important to keep this social interaction. It's really critical for our well-being.
I heard at least 4 really useful tips that I kind of take away. I mean, one is just the the power of animals, of pets, as icebreakers, right? It can be a little awkward to go up and, hey, will you be my friend? But from petting the dog, then it just leads to a conversation. The next time you see it, and then it kind of builds from there. It reminds me of, it may have started in Australia. I don't know where it started, but they had these social help groups for women. And they would notice them. They weren't just for women, but only women showed up. And the men would all sit by themselves in the cars outside. And they'd come and they'd say, hey, guys, you want to come in? I'm like, oh, no, I don't need any help. I'm not going to do that. But then they started creating these workshops that they would just put the tools in there. And the guys would just start working next to each other, and then every now and then say something. And then they were like, they're best friends, right? Over the years they developed. And they said women speak face to face and the guys would speak side to side. Yeah. And so it was, they felt awkward going direct, but the indirect way through a pet, it kind of creates that path in, which it makes a lot of sense. The other piece on it are the strong ties of family and really reinforcing those, but also appreciating those weak ties, those people we may only see once or twice a year at those conferences, and maintaining those relationships. Really powerful.
And, it helps you. Honestly, you are helping people, but it helps you. It makes you happy,
Yeah, and I forgot, that was the fourth, is the you putting out that positivity, right? Like your smile, your good morning, it's a multiplier, right? If you see somebody that is frowning and everything, it can impact your mood. But if you're the one putting out the good mood, you know how many other smiles you create. You don't know, it's this cascading effect. Yeah. So the multiplier effect, even when you don't feel great, start smiling. And pretty soon you will start feeling great because the people around you will be smiling. Everybody else will be happy. So that's really wonderful stuff, Dr. Ghannoum.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So before, this has been amazing. I certainly learned a lot and going to think about now my mycobiome as well as my microbiome. Before we sign off, what would your 5 kind of must-haves when it comes to your own A Lively Life be? You say, here are the things that I really need in my life. These are my top 5 to feel alive and getting the most out of it.
I mean, I'm number one, I really very fortunate having the family ties and my kids, the way we interact. And this, it's really very, 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 very important. And, sometimes even when you talk to your kids or when they are really young, you think they are not listening, but they listen all the time. And then you build this relationship. So this is one important factor, the relation, the top thing, one of the top things in my life. I like also to help people if possible. Like sometimes we all sometimes need a bit of help in certain things and whatever. So it's nice to have time to sit and have a coffee or tea, even at work. This is I find it very, very important. Again, it builds your relation. I like to be involved in research, which is exciting. It's really nice because I tell people, we as a scientist, we don't need drugs to be happy, and you do an experiment, it works. You say, oh my God, this is good. So so that's your work environment is very, very important to that, and taking care of yourself with respect to exercise and is really very, 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 very important. And sometimes just relax a little bit. Just it's okay. Life is good.
And if someone listening to this podcast was to take away one thing and get started on their longevity journey, what would you recommend for them?
Well, I tell you, it is all in your hand. I always say it's like a garden. You want the flowers in the spring and this sort of thing. You go give them fertilizer, whatever. You get rid of the weeds. It's all in your hand. Be optimistic, try to do it, and you will be able to do it. And that's my message to you.
We talked a lot about all the healthy things that we can do. Do you have anything that would be kind of in the other camp, a guilty pleasure or not so guilty? You mentioned you really like ice cream and not having too much grace, but what would be your top thing of like, hey, if I'm really cutting loose, this is the thing that I make space for?
I tell you, I would love to play some music. I never played a music instrument. That one thing I would do.
Yeah.
Which will give me pleasure.
Lovely. Well, Dr. Mahmoud Ghannoum, thank you so much for all you've shared with us today, and not just today, but all the work you've done over the decades and shared with the world. We'll certainly put everything in the show notes for people to find Biome, people to find you and the work you're doing. But is there anything you want to share with our listeners before we sign off?
No, I just want to say thank you, Taylor and Andrew. I really enjoyed it very much. It was fun. It's great fun talking to you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Home of Healthspan podcast. And remember, you can always find the products, practices, and routines mentioned by today's guests, as well as many other Healthspan role models on alively.com. Enjoy a lively day.